We have Tezvav Aleph. A woman who went with her husband overseas, and there were amity between them and her, and between him and her, and peace in the world. And she came and said, "My husband died; she may marry." Or if she said, "My husband died," she may be taken in Yibam. If there was amity between him and her, but war in the world, or if there was a conflict between him and her and a peace in the world, and she came and said, "My husband died," she is not believed. Rabbi Yehuda says she is never believed unless she comes weeping with her clothes torn. That's they said to him, in either case she may marry. Basil said, "We have not heard this suggestion except in the case where she came from the harvest and from the same country, as in the incidents which occurred. Beis Shammai said to them, it is the same whether she came from harvesting grain or picking olives or picking grapes or from one country to another." The sages mentioned the harvest only in recounting the actual incident. Basil recanted and began to rule like Beis Shammai. Shammai said she may marry and she receives a ketubah, but Beis Hillel says she may marry, but she does not receive a ketubah. Shammai said to them, "You permitted the grave erba offense, but you will not permit the less grave money offense." Beis Hillel replied, "We find that the brothers do not inherit the estate on her testimony." And Shammai replied that we can learn from this that her ketubah document in which he writes to her, "If you marry another, you will receive what is written to you." Beis Hillel recanted and began to rule like Beis Shammai. Hey,
Okay. Yeah. D Hang on. You did Gimel as well, huh?
yes.
Yeah. Okay. Good. Dalid. Hakol nemanim lehaida. So we normally we only accept edus from people who are kosher witnesses, but in this case we open it up to everyone to give testimony. We're even opening up to in order to allow her to remarry, even to categories of people who generally aren't believed, except. There are five categories of five people who often are believed on factual matters, even though they're women. A woman can Edichad Ne'eman B'Isurin and things like that. You can have a woman telling you that a kitchen is kosher and you're allowed to believe her. Um, uh, but in these cases, these are five relationships that aren't necessarily hostile, but are prone to hostility. And therefore, in these particular cases, we suspend the rule, just like Chazal made the rule that we can believe anyone who gives testimony about a man dying. They specifically kept these five people out of it because of the possibility that these women are so hostile to the wife that they may be willing to give fake information in order to cause it to have all these penalties when her husband actually returns from the living and finds that she's remarried and she has all of these terrible penalties. Okay, so who are these people? Her mother-in-law, Chamosa, Ubas Chamosa, in other words, her husband's sister, her sister-in-law. V'tzarasa, her co-wife, Yevimta, her 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 husband's brother's wife is Yevimta, which is distinct from Bas Chamosa, which is they're both in English we both lump them both together as sister-in-law, but they're two types of sister-in-law. One is her husband's sister, and one is her husband's brother's wife. Okay, Ubas Bala and her husband's daughter from a different marriage. And Ma ben get lemisa. What's the difference between get and misa? Because we find that these five women are allowed to bring a get from overseas and say, look, this was written in front of me and signed in front of me, so this is a valid get. And we do trust these women to bring a get. Why? Because the get has got signatures of Adim written on them. So if you wanna check it out, the Adim have signed it, and she's just being the courier. But in this case, we're actually relying on her testimony completely um, because of in order to permit the woman to remarry. Okay, what happens? Aid Omer Mace. So a witness came and said that the husband died, and the wife went and remarried. Oh, Lo Mace. So another witness came and said, "No, what you doing? I was just overseas and I saw him. We had coffee together." Okay, Hare Zo Lo Tetzei. That's not enough. One witness is not enough to undo what the court did before, because the court permitted her on the basis of one witness, and the court, but the court's not going to forbid her now that another witness comes to remove her, because that one witness has got a special power vested in them by based in to testify as if they're two witnesses. Okay. So we don't make her divorce the second man until her husband actually arrives. Eid omer meis u'shnayim omrim lo meis. Now, what happens if two witnesses came after the fact and said we were both just overseas and we saw this woman's husband. He's not dead. Now two witnesses is a different story. Af al pi she'nisais tetzei. Now she has to divorce from the second husband. And if the husband himself does come back to verify all the claims, then she's going to have all these penalties placed on her. Okay. Shnayim omrim meis ve'ed omer lo meis. If two witnesses said that he died, and then one more witness comes along at the same time, even before they've paskened the din, that doesn't cancel anything. Two witnesses are always the winner over one witness. Afal pi shelo nisais tinaseh. Even though she hasn't remarried yet, she is permitted lechatchila to go ahead and remarry because the two witnesses are as strong as anything. Okay, achas omeres meis. What happens if you have two wives of one man, two co-wives who come back from overseas and they say we were just at sea and our husband died on board. Okay, so well actually one of them says he died, but achas omeres lo meis. And the other one said no, he didn't die. Now, why would they do this? We don't know, but there's a possibility that each one is trying to sabotage the other. We've got to keep that in the back of our mind because they're co-wives, and we just said they're one of the five relationships that we don't trust them on each other. So Zosh Omeris Mace. So the woman who says he died, so we listen to her testimony in isolation and say, okay, Tina Sevasitol Kesubasa. She is believed regarding herself, so let her get married and she will collect her kesubah. V'zosh Omeris Lo Mace Lo Tina Se Velositol Kesubasa. Okay, so fine. She says that her husband's not dead, and therefore she believes that her husband isn't dead, and therefore she must remain as if she's married. Achos omeres meis, achos omeres nerag. What happens if the two of them agree that he's dead, but one says he died of natural causes and the other one said that he was killed? Rabbi Meir omer ho'il umachishos zo'es zo. Since they're coming into the Beis Din together and saying that these two testimonies which contradict each other, hare elu lo yinasu. They may not. So I assume that Rabbi Meir would also say this in the previous case where one just says he's dead and one says he's alive, and that they're giving contradictory information. See, what Rabbi Meir is saying is that where Chazal said that the co-wife is not believed is only leheter. We don't believe her to allow her co-wife to remarry, but if she comes with testimony that the husband is still alive, then we believe her to usher the other wife from remarrying. So Rabbi Meir is saying even if they're just disagreeing about how he died, that's a contradiction, and therefore we do not allow either of them to remarry. Rabbi Yehuda, Rabbi Shimon Amrim, Hoil v'zo v'zo modim she'ein kayam yinasu. It's immaterial. How he died is of no import. The important thing is that they're both agreeing that he's dead, and therefore they may both remarry. Eid omer meis, the eid omer lo meis. Now, we just said in the previous Mishnah that if one witness said that he died, and then she marries, and then another witness comes and says that he's not dead, she doesn't have to divorce. Okay, but this over here is the case where both of the witnesses are present in Beis Din at the same time. So the first witness says he's dead. The second witness says no, he's not dead. Isha omeres meis, Isha omeres lo meis. Or even if you have two women who are coming into court and contradicting each other, harezo lo tinaseh. So this is before Beis Din is paskened, and they won't give credence to the one witness if there is another witness that is contradicting them in Beis Din. But if they've already paskened that the woman is allowed to remarry, and now a second witness comes along and says no, he's not dead, the Beis Din says we're not recanting based on you. Okay. Vav. So the woman goes overseas with her husband. Amra bali. So she comes home and says, my husband died. Tina fine. We said this many times before. She can remarry and claim her kasubah. But Tarasa Asura, but her co-wife, who wasn't with them at all, she is not allowed to remarry. Why? Because this is a testimony from her co-wife. And hold on a second, but if the woman who's testifying is going and remarrying, she's going to be subject to the same penalties. Why don't we say that? Well, if she believes it so much that she's about to allow that she's allowing herself to remarry, why don't we allow her tzara to remarry? And again, because we have this thing about co-wives, um, it may be that the enmity between them is so great that the first wife will say Tamos nafshi im plishtim, like Shimshon,
Mm.
right? Would say even if I have to suffer the consequences, I just want to see her suffer. So we don't. She's not given credence. Okay, so being that is the case, what happens if she's a Bas Yisrael married to a Kohen and she doesn't have children? Okay. Um, which means that she should revert to she's only eating truma by virtue of her husband's status as a Kohen. Okay, tochal b'truma divrei Rabbi Tarfon. So Rabbi Tarfon says ad kedei kach, we don't believe the co-wife to the extent that we will allow her to carry on eating truma as if her husband is still alive. Rabbi Akiva Omer, Ein zo derech motziata migdei avera. That's not right. Just because we are suspicious of the co-wife's testimony doesn't mean she's always lying. Most of the time, she'll probably be telling the truth. In which case, how can you permit a woman who's she's a Bas Yisrael who's married to a Kohen, but she's now widowed from the Kohen? She can't eat truma. So what do we have to do? We have to keep her in that Safek position. Maybe her husband's dead, maybe her husband's alive. Asura linase v'asura milechol b'truma. So she is not allowed to remarry, but she's also not allowed to eat truma. Okay, and back to Yud Gimel Bais.
Well, base. Who is the minor wife who must refuse? Anyone whose mother or brother gave her in marriage with her consent. If they gave her in marriage without her consent, she does not need to refuse. If Canina Bentigno says any child who is unable to guard her betrothal object need not refuse. If Eliezer says a minor's act is void, it is if she had been seduced and Israel's daughter married to a Kohen may not eat truma, and a Kohen's daughter married to Israel may eat truma. Eliezer ben Yaakov says whenever she stayed for the husband, she is considered like his wife, but whenever she did not stay for the husband, she is not considered like his wife. If a girl refuses her husband, he is permitted to marry her relatives. She is permitted to marry his relatives. She is not disqualified from the priesthood. If he gave her a bill of divorce, he is prohibited from marrying her relatives. She is prohibited from marrying his relatives. She is qualified from the priesthood. If he divorced and remarried her, and then she refused him and married another and was widowed or divorced, she may remarry him. If she refused him and he remarried her, and then he divorced her and she married another and was widowed or divorced, she may not remarry him. This is the rule. In the case of divorce after refusal, she is forbidden to remarry him. In the case of refusal after divorce, she is permitted to remarry him.
Okay, Aleph Aleph.
Aleph. Go. 7 days before Yom Kippur, they said,
Wait, hold on. Stop. Yevamos. We're Yevamos Aleph Aleph.
Well, what do I do with that? Oh, I put it on the shelf. Okay. 15 women released their co-wives. Their co-wives and their co-wives and their co-wives, or co-wives from Kalisa and from Yibam ad infinitum. If they are following a man's daughter, daughter's daughter, and son's daughter, his wife's daughter, her son's daughter, and her daughter's daughter, his mother-in-law, his mother-in-law's mother, and his father-in-law's mother, his maternal sister, mother's sister, wife's sister, his maternal brother's wife, the wife of the non-contemporaneous brother, and his daughter-in-law. They released their co-wives and their co-wives from Chalitza and from Yibam ad infinitum. And if any of these dies refused to divorce or was found to be an aloneness, their wives are permitted. However, one cannot say of his mother-in-law or his mother-in-law's mother or father-in-law's mother that they were found to be an aloneness or that they refused. Okay. Base. How do they release the co-wives? If a man's daughter or any one of those forbidden relations was married to his brother, or he had another wife as well, and he died just as his daughter is released, she too, so too is her co-wife. If his daughter's co-wife went and married a second brother, and he also had another wife, and then he died just as his daughter's wife is released, so too is her co-wife's co-wife, even if there are 100. How is that that they died, their co-wives are permitted? If a man's daughter, any one of these forbidden relatives, was married to his brother, and he also had another wife, and his daughter died or was divorced, and then his brother died, her co-wife is permitted. Anyone who was able to refuse but did not do so, her co-wife requires Kalisa, but is prohibited from Yevamos. 6 forbidden relations are more stringent than these, but they are married to others. Their co-wives are permitted. His mother, father's sister, paternal sister, father's brother, brother's wife, and paternal brother's wife.
Yeah.
Okay. So, yeah. And now we should be with Yoma, correct? Yoma. We have a Dalit. They brought him the he-goat. He slaughtered it and received his blood in a basin. He entered the place which he had previously entered, stood in the place where he had stood, and sprinkled it from one time upward and 7 times downward. But he did not aim in sprinkling either above or below, rather like one who whips. This is how he would count: 1, 1+1, 1+2, etc. Exacted it and put the vessel on the second stand, which was in the holy. If Yehuda says there was only one stand there, he took the ox's blood and put down the he-goat's blood. He sprinkled from it at the curtain facing the ark from the outside, one upward and 1 7 downward, but he did not aim. This is how he would count. He took the he-goat's blood and put down the ox blood, sprinkled it from at the curtain facing the ark from at outside, one upward and 1 7 downward. He emptied the ox's blood into the he-goat's blood, and he poured the full vessel into the empty vessel. He shall go out to the altar which is before Hashem. This refers to the gold-plated altar in the holy. He started to downward. Where did he start? From the northeast corner to the northwest corner to the southwest corner, to the southeast corner. At the place from which he started to dial on the outer order for a regular sacrifice, there he would finish on the inner altar. If Eliezer says he remained in his place and dialed the blood, and all of them he applied the blood from the bottom to the top, except for this one that was in front of him, upon which he applied the blood from the top to the bottom. Okay.
Oh, okay, yeah. Yeah, fine.
Right?
Let's
Okay.
apply to the top to the bottom. Yeah, so one more Vav as well.
I missed it.
No,
Okay.
you stopped it in the pay, so let's carry on with Vav.
He sprinkled blood upon the surface of the altar 7 times, and the remainder of the blood he would pour upon the western base of the outer altar. But those sacrifices of the outer altar he would pour upon the southern base. Those and those mixed together in the canal and flowed out to the Kidron Valley. It was sold to gardeners and fertilizer, and one is liable to unauthorized use of it.
Okay.
Okay. And now we should have Chumos. Okay. Base Aleph. One may not separate truma from clean to unclean, but if he did separate his truma, his truma. In truth, they said, if part of a cake of pressed figs become unclean, he separates truma from its clean part for the unclean part. So too, a bundle of vegetables or a heap. If there were 2 cakes, 2 bundles, or 2 heaps, one unclean and one clean, they may not separate from one to the other. Rabbi Eliezer says one may separate truma from the clean for the unclean. One may not separate truma from unclean for clean, but if he did separate in error, his truma is truma. If intentionally he has said affected nothing. So too of the son of a Levite who had Tevel Maisuk, so then he's separating for it. If in error what he did is done, if intentionally it has affected nothing. Rabbi Yehuda says if he knew at the outset, then even if he did it in error, he has affected nothing. And with one immersed vessels on Shabbos, if in error, you may use them. If willfully, you may not use them. If one tithe or cooked on Shabbos in error, you may eat. If willfully, he may not eat. If one planted on the Sabbath in error, he may maintain it. And willfully, he must uproot it. But on the seventh year, whether in error or willfully, he must uproot it.
That's it. Yeah.
The one that says that he can, if one cooked on Shabbos in error, he can eat. I didn't think you could do that at all.
There are different opinions on it. There's Rabbi Meir holds that you can that for other people they can benefit immediately, and for him he can benefit after Shabbos.
Shabbos, right.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm actually gonna have to go. I'm getting picked up now, so I'll leave you to
Okay.
the rest of the
All right.
Hazaras
I'll see you.
yourself.
All right. Have a good Kodesh. Thank you. Thank you for finishing.